I am going to into my talk, which I have titled Joy, Joy, Joy. I was talking to a friend the other day, last week, and mentioned I wanted to talk about joy as a topic because I think it's really important to bring the idea of joy into our days because it's such a challenge right now. There's so many challenging things in our lives, in our personal lives, and in the world at large, that sometimes we can forget to connect with joy. And it's really important that we do. It's part of the Buddha's teachings. It's part of these 7 factors of awakening. So it's the invitation to move towards joy, to recognize joy is part of liberation, is part of freedom. So it's important to connect with that. And in fact, I follow a woman, Sonia Renee Taylor, on Instagram, and she's offering I think it's a weekend or a day or something. She's not Buddhist, but in her teaching, she's offering something called Joy During the Apocalypse. So it's something that a lot of folks are reflecting on. And so when I was mentioning this to my friend, he said, and he's been a long-time practitioner. He's also a teacher. And he said when he first came into the teaching of joy, I think it was on a workshop he was taking or a retreat, he had tremendous resistance to it, tremendous aversion to the idea of joy and bringing joy into his life. And he really struggled with it. And that's not uncommon. I mean, I don't know how many of you had that same reaction. It's like, ugh, joy or whatever. You may have, you may not have, but it's not uncommon. And we defend ourselves against joy for so many reasons. And I know Brene Brown. Many of you know who she is. She's really great. She's written many books, but one she wrote several years ago, I think it's Living Wholeheartedly. I think that was the book. She talked about something called foreboding joy. That's one of the ways we kind of push joy away. We have foreboding joy is not allowing ourselves to feel it because we know it's going to end. And I don't want to have to deal with the ending of something, so I'm just not going to experience it at all. It's, I mean, I actually remember when my husband and I were talking about getting married, I thought, you know what, he's going to die someday and I don't want to deal with that, so maybe I shouldn't get married in the first place. We push away things that may be pleasant because we at some level understand impermanence. And what that is a denial of reality. If there's joy in the moment, to push it away is a denial of it. There's that old song by Simon and Garfunkel, I Am a Rock, where some of the lyrics are, if I never loved, I never would have cried, so I'm never going to love again. This aversion we have to discomfort or pain or grief or loss. So we deny the moment. There's so many reasons why we individually may push away joy. We live in a society that tells us perhaps we haven't accomplished enough, or we're not worthy to experience this, that we have a little bit further to go or a little bit more to do before we can relax. We have to be a little bit more productive, before this is okay for us. Or there's the other thought of, which is I think also fairly common, which I've also recognized that I've had at times. How can I be joyful when there's so much suffering in the world? How can I have this moment when other folks are not having that moment? And again, that's a denial of reality. That's a denial of our experience in the moment when we say, oh, there's joy. And then the critical voices come in, the judging mind, the critical mind, the harsh committee that says, no, 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 that has some kind of yardstick to which we're measured. And we don't experience the moment. We don't experience the moment. It's like oftentimes we're much more familiar with pushing away discomfort, but we also push away comfort and ease and joy. I remember the first time when I was on a retreat and they were talking about the 7 factors of awakening, and it was like, oh my God, joy. Because sometimes we don't even recognize it. And I recognized that I had some joy. And I'm like, does that mean I was so new. I was like, am I close to enlightenment? And it's like, no, it just means that there's some joy in this moment. I still have a little ways to go. But it's like, oh my God, joy. It's like, because I wasn't used to acknowledging it. We're so sometimes focused on examining the discomfort, the suffering, the discontent. Another thing about joy is a lot of times people, or sometimes folks, confuse pleasure for joy. We often chase pleasure, looking for whatever we think will make us happy forever. We'll live happily ever after. That thing out there, that experience, that relationship, that job, whatever it is, that ice cream cone, then I'll be happy. You chase sensual pleasure, which is what the Buddha said is such a root of dukkha, a root of our discontent, because we're looking out there for something that we think will make us happy, will bring us pleasure, everything's ephemeral. It's going to pass. You're going to finish the ice cream cone. The relationship will end. Someone will pass away in some way, shape, or form, and then we'll be disappointed because it's the externals that we think is what is important rather than the internal work that this teaching of joy in Buddhism is. It's this internal experience of ease and connection in this moment. When we're chasing outside, it takes on this flavor of striving and, again, achievement or getting. What's the next thing that's going to bring me joy? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? There's a flavor of addiction to it. Got to get the next thing. Got to get the next thing. And we live in a society that, once again, that supports that. Oh, you don't have that? Here, you better get this. This will solve all your problems because it contains, Formula X. And Formula X is the latest, greatest thing. So really being aware of that. But the Buddha says all that running and seeking doesn't work. We need to stop and be. Stop and be. That's what we do when we sit. We stop. And we learn to rest in being. It seems so counterintuitive because we're trained to look on the outside. But instead, we're invited to just be with the experience that's right here. And it's especially important to recognize joy when it's here, especially in difficult times. Because as I said, oftentimes we think we shouldn't feel it or we have to postpone it. I've told this story many times. When my brother passed away, my brother died about 1990. We're talking like 30-something years ago, 33 years ago. And there was a funeral in the morning, and it was really sad. And of course, and then in the afternoon, we were sitting at his wife's house, his widow's house, and we were all out back, the family, and we were telling stories and we were laughing. And I had this awareness of, am I allowed to be laughing now? Allowed to be laughing? Am I allowed to be having this laughter and this joy and this fun with this really sad moment? And then I realized that's what's present right now. I can't just stop and go, stop laughing, everyone. How dare you? It's like, no, we have to be in the moment. We have to greet the experience that shows up with wisdom and compassion. And Bhikkhu Bodhi, who's a wonderful, wonderful teacher, he says that the cultivation of joy is important to regulate despair. It's too easy to fall into that place of doom, but that's way out of balance. Equanimity is greeting everything as it shows up, greeting it appropriately with kindness, with compassion, with joy. You know, that's that place of equanimity, letting everything be the way it is without preference, without saying this is right and this is wrong and this is good and this is bad. Just be with. We have to recognize there's that, I think it's a Zen teaching, that there's 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows. Let's welcome them all in. Let's welcome them all in. And in the teaching of the 7 factors of awakening, their counterpoint in the teaching are the hindrances, which are craving and aversion and restless mind and fear and worry and doubt and dullness, where we just kind of want to numb out. So when those are absent, we make space for the arising of joy. We make space because we're not caught up in wanting or not wanting. When we're able to let go of that preference, there's this tremendous ease that arises, and which allows joy to flower. In early Buddhist texts, it says joy and happiness are not dependent on pleasure or outside circumstances. They're dependent on our relationship to the world. How do we relate to the world? We can be calm in spite of what's going on. Joy is the cessation of dukkha. Joy is the cessation of needing things to be a certain way. You know, joy is authentic. It's an undefended heart. We're not hiding from anything. We're able to turn towards this moment, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's unpleasant, you know, because as I said, when we deny joy, when it's present, that's denying reality, which is like some kind of numbing or diversion or aversion or craving. No, and it's not a spiritual bypass. Recognizing joy is not like saying, everything's fine, everything's fine. It's not that at all. It's acknowledging pain. It's acknowledging grief. It's acknowledging sadness, but being open to joy when it's there. Now, because some of us do have a difficult time with it, just as with many of the heart practices, loving kindness, compassion. These are loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, equanimity. They're a natural flowering of this mindfulness practice, but some of us are so conditioned to not feel things or judge particular experiences, judge emotions, like oftentimes we're taught in our families or by our communities. It's not okay to be angry. It's not okay to be sad, you know, stiff upper lip, what's going on? And so we have to disentangle ourselves from those really deep conditioned stories about our minds and what's okay and what's not okay. And so to do that, what I think is really helpful, especially around joy, is the teachings of James Barrows. And some of you may know James. He's a teacher up at Spirit Rock. He actually is in Berkeley, but he teaches at Spirit Rock quite a lot. He lives and teaches in Berkeley, and he has been doing a class for, a long time. I first met him 13, 14 years ago, and have trained in his Awakening Joy class. And he's been doing this Awakening Joy class for probably 15, 16, maybe 20 years. I'm not sure, a long time. And I love it. And what I want to do is go through a little bit of it. Basically, what I like going through is I like looking at his chapter titles, because it's really a solid Dharmic approach to cultivating joy in our lives. And so I want to do that right now. Here's the book. It's called Awakening Joy. And his name is James Baraz, B-A-R-A-Z. And he does the class, I think it starts every January. He's still doing it. And so he says, first off, if you want to cultivate joy, you have to set an intention. I mean, it's kind of obvious. It's like telling your GPS where you want to go. If you don't have that GPS, you can just be wandering around. And so to set an intention is incredibly important in Buddhism. It's a second factor of the Eightfold Path. So incline the mind towards joy. Make the decision that you're willing to have this in your life. And then notice what gets in the way. Watch the committee, watch the story that says, as I mentioned earlier, well, it's going to end, so I don't want to have it, or I don't deserve it, or there's too much pain and suffering in the world. So if you set an intention to experience joy, it's also helpful to watch what gets in the way, because that's where a lot of the work is. It's like, oh, maybe we can begin to disentangle these stories that keep us from experiencing joy. Begin to say yes when it shows up. Can you say yes? And in order to do that, there needs to be mindfulness. Mindfulness is the foundation of freedom. The mindfulness is the foundation of liberation. If we can't pay attention, if we're not paying attention, it's so easy to get caught up in the reactive mind. What do they say? I think Jack Kornfield said it, and I think they say it up in Spirit Rock. You must be present to win, like a door prize. Mindfulness is present, being present. You must be present to win. So it's incredibly important. It's the key to well-being. It's this kind awareness, not a judging awareness, but like we were doing in the practice this afternoon, this kind awareness, this willingness to greet everything that shows up with gentleness, and this willingness to be present for your life without thinking it should be different or it should be that. It's like, what is right here? Be willing to see what the stories are. Be willing to let go of your best ideas about shoulds and if onlys and what ifs. So this mindfulness, this groundedness in the present time is so vitally important. And also, another important component of joy is the quality of gratitude. It's the most direct way to access well-being. And I think of gratitude as another heart practice. It's this recognition of what we have. It's the recognition of the experience of what's present in our lives rather than what's missing. As a friend of mine years ago said, we can either be grateful or we can grumble, but they really can't seem to exist in the same place. And again, what gets in the way of gratitude? It's very similar to what gets in the way of joy. How can I be grateful when there's all this stuff going on? And I used to be so dismissive. It's like somebody say, can you be grateful for breathing? And I'm like, really? Breathing? With all the other stuff that's going on? And it's like, and boy, is that ever a huge sense of ego and separation and all about me, instead of saying, oh my goodness, I can breathe, I can walk, I can do all these things. I have a home, I have cats that are really cute, and all these things, even simple things, simple things. And that's why I always invite a moment of gratitude at the end of practice. Rick Hanson, who wrote Buddha's Brain and who's an evolutionary neuropsychologist, a Buddhist teacher, and also a neuroscientist, says gratitude has a beneficial impact on our neural pathways, on the brain. You're actually impacting it in a beneficial way, shifting perspective to something really beneficial and helpful. So gratitude. James also talks about, in the book, he talks about this relationship he had with his mom, who was always grumbling, always grumbling. And I think she was in her 80s at one point, and he was staying with her for a couple of weeks, and she would just always complain. And he said, okay, please make a deal. And in fact, there's a YouTube video you can see of his mom. If you Google James Barra's mom, you'll probably find the YouTube video where she said that he asked her at the end of anything she complained about to stick on the tagline, "And I'm so blessed," or something like that. "And I'm so blessed." Again, shifting perspective, which is what we're doing in this practice, is shifting perspective. What we do in our heart practices. So gratitude is incredibly important. And as well as that, it's also, he talks about how important it is to find joy in difficult times. And again, it's not a spiritual bypass, but it's an acknowledgement of the human condition. And there can be joy in difficult times. And I told the story about my brother. We are moment by moment in awareness. We're open to everything. We're open to the five remembrances. We're open to the joys. We're open to whatever is right here. And we hold everything with tenderness. May I hold this with kindness. May I hold this difficulty with compassion. There's a softening. The factors of awakening don't say everything's going to be great all the time, and then you're going to feel joy. It says we lose preference. We can be at ease with challenges. So important. And the next one I think is really important too, this bliss of blamelessness, this living with integrity. There's a whole section of the Eightfold Path, foundational teachings on sila, integrity, wise action, wise speech, wise livelihood, how to live in harmony with the rest of the world without causing suffering for yourself or others. We see so often, because when you live in harmony with others, not intentionally causing suffering, intentionally stealing or hurting someone, there's this ease. Even if something goes awry, the intention was not to cause harm. And so how, and this happens to a lot of people when they sit, when their initial practice, there's this guilt and this shame when they start remembering things. But if you live with integrity and you live in harmony with other beings, there's this weight that's lifted. There's no shame, there's no remorse, there's no guilt. And if there is, then you get to work with that and say, what's going on here? We investigate, we have curiosity about what's underneath this, because that's part of the practice, is curiosity. What's going on here? And there's a quote that James has in the book from the Buddha: "For one who leads a virtuous life, it is a natural law that remorse will not arise. For one free of remorse, it's a natural law that gladness will arise. For one who is glad at heart, it's a natural law that joy will arise." So again, it's this little, if one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. And it's, again, the next piece of this cultivation of joy is the joy of letting go. I think I've done day-longs on the joy of letting go, because that's what it is. We let go of our ideas, we let go of our agenda, we let go of our preferences, and we just greet the moment as it is. We let go of our stories about what we think should or shouldn't be. Craving, wanting things, is this real deep core cause of suffering and our inability to be present with the way it is. And so if we practice letting go, that's an antidote to craving. This cultivation of generosity as well. Not just generosity, financial generosity, but generosity of time, generosity of spirit. Even just listening to someone share something is such an act of generosity. So let go of mine, me, mine, I, me, and mine. Just be present. Let go of preferences for things needing to be a particular way. And then the next couple are kind of tied together. And there again, they can be really challenging. The first is the sweetness of loving ourselves. And then the second one in this couplet is the joy of loving others. And this is where those heart practices come in, the metta, loving kindness and compassion and joy and equanimity, because these heart qualities are unconditional. We don't get to say, I will love you if, because that's a transactional experience, and that's not really loving someone. That's kind of rewarding them for doing what you want them to do. The heart practice is compassion, kindness, joy, unconditional. So begin to cultivate this self-forgiveness, loving kindness for self, loving kindness for others. Really important. And mudita, appreciative joy, be happy for the good fortune, the wholesome good fortune of others. That's again letting go of this idea of lack, of if they get theirs, where's mine? I love that meme I've seen lately that talks about equal rights. Equal rights for me does not mean less rights for you. It's not pie. And the same thing is true about this, loving kindness, me being kind to you or happy for your joy or your good fortune doesn't mean there's less for me. That's when we're holding tight to these ideas of lack. Pema Chodron talks about that. This inability to be happy for others is because we come from this place of lack. So to just be willing to have joy. Because when somebody else is joyful because of their good fortune, why wouldn't we want to celebrate that and bring that joy into our lives as well? It's this willingness to let go one more time of our agenda, to be open, authentic, undefended, and cultivation of compassion. Keeping our hearts open in the face of difficulties. The image of the Guan Yin, the embodiment of compassion. They say, she who hears the cries of the world. And the word in Pali, karuna, means a quivering of the heart. So we're touched by the cries of the world, but we're not overcome by it. We have this grounding, this steadiness, this care for the world, but we're grounded in this, in our practice. We're grounded in this eightfold path. We're grounded in this recognition that the human condition, there's pain, there's suffering, there's loss, there's grief, and we don't run from it. We don't run from it. There's an ease there. I don't know if you've ever been with someone who's died at the moment of death. And it's really an interesting experience. One would think that it's really sorrowful and sad, but I've been in that place a few times, and at times there's great joy. It's really extraordinary that, when you're fully present and open to the experience, it's like, wow, I would not expect to have felt that, but there's this moment, it feels like release. And to be with another person in such an intimate way, it's extraordinary. So if we can let go of our ideas of, well, this is going to be like this, and that's going to be like that, and instead just be fully open in the moment, it's quite extraordinary. But it takes the effort of this practice and this awareness and this willingness. And then finally, the last piece is just the joy of being, relaxing the mind, relaxing the body, resting in equanimity, resting in the way things are, this interconnection with all beings. And I think there's a piece in the book that talks about this as well. You know, James, I think it's Guy Armstrong, who's another teacher. He says, we don't have to do anything special, but we stop striving. A natural happiness is there to be touched. Our basic nature is peaceful, and that peace brings a kind of joy. And then James says, you can drop into this relaxed, effortless presence at any time while listening to music, soaking in a hot tub, meditating, or sipping a cup of tea. It can also happen in the midst of energetic activities like swimming or hiking or singing. It happens when we invite it and stand in awe at the miracle of being alive. It happens when we set aside the judging mind that separates us from the moment. And it arises when we realize we have nowhere to go but here. It's the joy of letting go. It's the joy of just being, without clutching or clinging, without preference, regardless of what's happening. Now, always the caveat is, that it doesn't mean we sit there and we have no boundaries and we're just like, la, 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 like some people think Buddhists are, I can't say nothing, that's not loving and kind. It's like, no, we also hold people accountable. We work to end injustice where we see it, but we're absolutely present to what's right here. And then we do what needs to be done. But can we be fully present, mindful, aware, letting go, open to the joy, open to the sadness, just open to the moment? So, thank you for your kind attention. I think it's so important to bring this quality into our world, bring this quality into our lives, practice, cultivate it, make space for it. Why not? Why not? Why say no to joy? I mean, it's so interesting when you think about it, but we do subconsciously a lot of the time. But it's really worthwhile because, again, it's part of that way we move through the world. It's part of that way we get to liberation. We get to equanimity and a place of no preference, which is such a place of freedom. If you've ever been there when you really don't have a preference and you're not worried about this or you're not worried about that, and there's this place of ease. When we work towards it and cultivate it, we can have it much more than just every once in a blue. So thank you, my friends, for your attention, and I'm happy to hear any questions or comments or thoughts about how you find joy in your life, or if you struggle with it, what gets in the way. Let this be a personal reflection for you. Maybe, perhaps not necessarily now, but I invite you to take this with you because I feel it's really important, especially in this world we're in right now, because it can be so fraught. Joy is absolutely necessary. So thank you. So if there's any questions or comments, rebuttals, I love it. Cool. Then I will let you revel in the joy that I hope you're all feeling. And let's just sit for just another minute, just letting let's drop out of your head for a moment and just come into your bodies, really taking a second to experience any sensations, maybe noticing any differences from the sensations of the body earlier in our gathering to where you are now. Letting yourself relax as you settle and open to what may be here right now. Just rest in being. remembering that you can search the world over, high and low, north, south, east, west, and not find anyone more worthy of kindness, compassion, and joy than you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, my friends. And thank you, Doug, for hosting this afternoon. And invite you all to check out Jokai's morning or the MBSR class, which I'm in, and I'm excited about starting that as well. Taking it as a student, I'm looking forward to that. So, I hopefully we'll see you next time. And don't forget the opportunity to offer any kind of dana, your volunteer expertise, your financial support of the sangha. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, everyone. Much love. Bye.